You know, you got to give credit to CNN because, actually, you know what? No, you don't. Don't give them any credit whatsoever. Man, I got to tell you, these people, the Democrat Party, they never learn, do they? They never learn, and I'm all for it. And the one thing you can say about the Republican Party, and yeah, I know that they have trouble coming together when they need to come together. I know they have trouble sometimes with their messaging. I know that they're weak-kneed and they're lily-livered, and a lot of them, you just never know. They change just like the weather. I know a lot of them claim to be MAGA, but when the rubber hits the road, I think that's the saying. When the rubber hits the road, they ain't MAGA. They ain't MAGA, no way, no how. But at the end of the day, at least they learn. Some of them from their mistakes. The Democrats never do. The Democrats continue to follow the same playbook. They're still going down the same road. And these questions, OMG, this Donald Trump was hosting El Salvadoran President Bukele. And they were hanging out. They were talking about all kinds of things. And CNN's Caitlin Collins was in the room. And Donald Trump just continued. Hang on, let me turn my light on. Oh no, why is my light out? Hold on, my light's not working. Why is my blue light not working? That's a problem. I don't know why my blue light's not working. Well, oh, there we go. Look at that. There we go. Blue light special. Anyway, and President Bukele was there at the Oval Office. They were taking questions from CNN. Wait, what happened again? It's going out again. What is going on? Says the batteries. Oh, well, you know what? I guess we're gonna be blue lightless today. But they were talking to President Bukele, and they started asking these questions. And the best part was that President Bukele, just like President Donald Trump, understands how ridiculous these people at CNN are, and he wasn't there for. He wasn't letting them get away with anything. They were asking about this guy. What's his name? Kilmar. I forget Kilmeade. Is one of those. This guy, the fellow who's a dad, as they label him, from Maryland, and he was deported, and it was an accidental deportation. Well, no accidental deportation. President Donald Trump and his whole staff, whether it's the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, or Tom Homan, or ICE, or whoever, there's no mistaking. They knew exactly what they were doing, and this guy's gone, and he was an illegal, and now they want to bring him back. The judges are ordering them to bring him back. And CNN asked President Bukele about it, and he ripped in. I mean, he just started laughing in CNN's face. You know that when you have multiple presidents in one room and they're all laughing and making fun of you, you know that you're doing something wrong. Not only that, but President Donald Trump had his entire cabinet basically go around and just poke fun at Caitlin Collins. They all just made her look. It was like one after another, hot potato. And we'll get to all that here in just a minute. I would like to say, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure, if you have not yet already, subscribed to this channel. Make sure you're subscribed to this station. Make sure that you're watching us. If you're watching us on Rumble or X or YouTube or wherever you happen to be, amen, hallelujah. First of all, thanks so much for being here. And second of all, we want to make sure that you get this content whenever we publish it. We publish a lot of content, and we publish it often. So what I urge you to do is I urge you to, just hit that little button that says notify. Hit that little button that looks like a little bell, little ding-a-ling. Just hit the little ding-a-ling so that way, whenever we go live, whenever we produce some new content, you're gonna get it delivered to you. And if you're listening to our podcast page, I want to say thank you very much because, man, we rocketed up the chart. I don't usually get into the podcast charts on this show because, there's some of those people that they like to brag on themselves constantly, but and I don't brag on myself constantly. Just like on occasion, but we had a monumental weekend. We had a really good weekend, and Mark Kaye Saves the Republic is now a top 50 podcast on Apple iTunes, which I'm very excited about. In fact, you know what? Here, don't just take my word for it. Let me show you the chart. Here's the chart. If you see right there, it says number 46, Mark Kaye Saves the Republic, Kayetriot Media, and we're right up there. Tim Pool's at number 43, The Five from Fox News Radio's number 44. We're up there with, we got to beat George Conway because that guy's just horrible. But we had a really great weekend, and we're doing really well with this particular podcast. So we're excited about that. Who else are we beating here? It looks like we're beating Jim Acosta. That's not hard. Oh, Benny Johnson. We popped up above Benny. Countdown with Keith Olbermann. That guy's a lunatic. I'm shocked he's not more popular because it's just the rantings of a madman. And I thought a lot more people would enjoy listening to that. Speaking of madmen? Oh, there he is, Brian Kilmeade. We're beating Brian Kilmeade. That's all. That's all that really matters in the world. So anyway, listen, thank you so much for making us top 50. We want to get into the top 25. So we're gonna urge you again, make sure that you are subscribed to this station. Make sure that if you're listening to the podcast on iTunes especially, you hit that button that says follow. I want to follow this podcast. I want this podcast. It really, I don't know. It says follow like you're following this podcast, but really the way podcasts work, it's more like the podcast is following you. Because you know what happens is whenever I follow a podcast, I get in my car, whatever, I plug in my phone, all of a sudden, boom, it downloads all the new episodes of the podcast. And I go, man, I just can't shake this podcast. This podcast's following me wherever I go. So it doesn't matter. Either way, just hit that little button. Oh, the blue light's back. That's weird. Okay. And you know what? Why don't we just go ahead and get into this? All right, so President Bukele from El Salvador, who's like our BFF, man. El Salvador. They become our BFF. They become our amigo mas greto. And the president there in the United States of America, he's with Donald Trump. And I will say this. He's not wearing a tie, but he is wearing a suit. And I feel like that's okay. It's not disrespectful like when what's his name? Vladimir Zelensky rolled into the White House, demanded all these things, picked a fight with JD Vance, and was wearing like commando gear. No, this guy shows he's wearing a black suit, black coat, black pants. But instead of a coat and tie, he's wearing just like a black, a crew neck t-shirt, probably very expensive. It's probably something very expensive, probably like Calvin Klein or Hugo Boss or something. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the brand is, but he looks very nice. So I don't think it was a big issue, but he rolls in and they go to the Oval Office and the whole cabinet is there. And he brought his whole cabinet and they start taking questions from the media. And one of the questions, one of the questions that was asked was, it was about these criminals that are in the United States of America and that are being deported to El Salvador. And they asked President Bukele. Well, first they asked President Donald Trump. And I got to tell you, Caitlin Collins, she asked this question, and Donald Trump, he first of all insults her and her network. And then he goes, hey, let's just have everybody in the room take pot shots at Caitlin Collins and let her know how stupid she is for asking this question. Listen, this made my whole morning.
Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CB.
By the way, I'd like to point out, not only does he doesn't just say, let's hear this question from this low-rated network, he specifically pinpoints that she's a low-rated anchor. Donald Trump isn't just like, oh, low-rated CNN. He's like, no, low-rated anchor at CNN. Let's take a question from her.
Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CB.
Thank you, President. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job. Thank you. Wait a minute. Can you just also respond?
Wait a minute. And all of a sudden, Caitlin Collins thinks, okay, well, I got that condescending answer from Pam Bondi, but then Donald Trump goes, wait a minute, no. You know what? That was good, but that was not condescending enough. So let's go to Stephen Miller, Deputy White House Chief of Staff, shall we? Stephen Miller, you can really make Caitlin Collins feel low and idiotic. Let's hear what you have to say, because I really would like to get your take on this.
Asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As 2 immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan to ask?
So there you go. And again, this is just a beautiful summation of it. He's like, look, this guy is a citizen of El Salvador. He's here illegally. We can't go to El Salvador and just rip the guy off the streets. We can't go to El Salvador and just steal him away. We can't kidnap this guy. He's not a citizen of the United States of America. We sent him home because there was already a deportation order because he shouldn't have been here. And because he's not a citizen of the United States, and because he's a citizen of El Salvador, and because there's a deportation order, it's illegal for him to be here in the United States of America. That's why he's not here. That's why he's in El Salvador. And he goes, and with respect to you, President Bukele, we don't want to go out. Like, what are I supposed to do? Send in a SEAL team to in the dark of night to smuggle this guy back into the United States of America? Oh, that wasn't it, though. That was it. Then there was Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. Marco Rubio wanted to weigh in too. He's like, can I make her feel stupid too? Here's what Marco said.
This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin, except for Venezuela that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President, no, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States.
Boom. That's right. Mic drop. No court in the United States has the ability or the responsibility or the authority to conduct the foreign policy of the United States of America. The foreign policy of the United States of America is conducted by, who is it again? What's his name? Oh, right. The president. And the president is Donald Trump. And it doesn't matter if the courts don't like it, or if the courts think that he's wrong, or the courts think that it's mean to deport illegal gang members who threaten and rape and kill Americans. If you think that if you would much rather have those illegal MS-13 gang members and those Tren de Aragua gang members here in the United States to, I don't know, kill people, break the laws, run around taking over apartment complexes armed with rifles in Boulder, Colorado, eating the cats, eating the dogs, eating the pets of the people who live there. If you would rather have that, I'm sorry, you're in the wrong country. President Donald J. Trump is the president. He's in charge of foreign policy, and the courts are not. But as if that weren't enough, you would think that she'd had enough. She gets insulted by President Donald Trump. She gets pimp slapped by Pam Bondi and Stephen Miller. Then she's just like icing on the cake. Marco Rubio goes, look, let me dumb this down for you as much as I possibly can. He was deported to his country of origin. That's where you take people. And once they're there, there's nothing we can do about it. It's out of our hands. So what does she do? She asks President Bukele to weigh in, thinking she's going to get, I don't know, some kind of different or better answer, or I guess not treated as roughly. Oh, no. No, mi amiga. No es la verdad. Listen to this.
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to be suggesting that I smuggle terrorists into the United States, right?
It's always
how can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States. I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
But you could release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. We just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into our country.
There's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people.
These are sick people. They, by the way, just so you know, these CNN people, they're fake. They're not credible at all. Nobody watches their network. They're low rated. She's low rated. They're all idiots. And oh yeah, they're sick people. They would love for you to smuggle a known terrorist in the United States and let him just run rampant through our streets, causing all kind of mayhem and havoc and killing and smuggling and bringing in fentanyl and whatever else these terrible, horrible, no good, very bad people. That's what they want. Sick, twisted CNN people. And Bukele's right there going, what do you want me to do? He's not the law says this guy is not allowed in the United States of America. So if President Bukele, like they thought he was going to show up at the White House with the guy and say, "Oh, President Trump, I think you lost this. This is yours, right? I'm bringing it back." No, that's not how it works. he's like, you want me to smuggle a terrorist, a foreign terrorist into the United States of America? You know, he's thinking, estúpida, what is going on?
Well, I'm supposed to not suggesting that I'll smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right? How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it.
Of course, clearly you're not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, huh? Clearly you're not suggesting that. That would be just foolish. No, I'm not going to do that. This guy his English is his second language. He's the president of El Salvador, and he understands American law better than Caitlin Collins from CNN. But I mean, most people do. Then somebody asked Donald Trump about more criminal. This is another dumb question too. How many more criminals, President? How many more criminals are you planning on sending? Not just criminals. How many more illegal alien, gang member, criminal thugs and drug dealers and human traffickers and murderers are you going to ship out of the United States of America? Are you done yet? Donald Trump's like, I'll ship them all out.
How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it because nobody can understand it. Nobody smart or with common sense can understand it. So we have millions of people that should not be in this country that are dangerous. Not just people, because we have people, but we have millions of people that are murderers, drug dealers. They've been allowed to come into our country by other countries that were very smart.
Yeah, and now we want to get him back out. And President Bukele, he's not dumb. President Bukele, he said, first of all, look, we've just created the safest country in the world, really. We were the most dangerous country in Central America. Now we're the safest. And probably we're safer than most countries globally. And he's right about that. And the reason they're safe is because, well, they shipped all their criminals here, but they put the rest of their criminals, guess where they put them? In a massive jail, and they treat them like criminals. They take away their rights. They strip their dignity. They shave their heads. They don't allow them to communicate with each other or form any kind of bonds. They're put to work. It's made to be an unpleasant atmosphere. It's made to be an unpleasant environment. They don't get 3, I would say, really well-cooked meals a day. They don't have time in the yard. They don't have TVs and video games. They don't get free college education from bleeding heart liberal college professors who show up. By the way, you send your kid to college, and depending on where you're going or what kind of scholarships or in-state or whatever, you're paying somewhere between, $15,000 and $100,000 a year for their education. You send your kid to prison, the same professors, the same educators, the same education that your children are getting from a lot of these places, they're getting for free. Why? Because they're in prison. And I guess being a criminal, you get free education. It's a weird and it's a bizarre and it's a crazy thing, but that's what's going on. Not in El Salvador. In El Salvador, you break the law, you go to jail, they shave your head, they treat you like a criminal. And when you get out, the last thing you ever want to do is go back. The last thing you ever want to do. Recidivism, it doesn't exist in El Salvador because these people know better. And so what Bukele has been able to do is he's been able to create really a cottage industry, if you will, of incarceration. It's now one of their biggest imports, or I guess export. Well, I guess you're importing it. I don't know what you're doing. We're exporting our criminals to El Salvador, and they're taking care of them, and we're gonna pay. I mean, think about this. Bukele is looking around, going, "Look, I got all this space. I know how to keep these people in line. If you don't want your criminals in your country, send them over here. Pay me 10 grand a year per, 20 grand a year per, whatever it takes, and they will create a booming incarceration industry in El Salvador. They already have." And Donald Trump's like, "I'll send more. I'll send all of them. I'm gonna deport every single." I mean, why wouldn't you want? That's a dumb question too. What is even the answer to that? Like somebody, let me play the question again. That wasn't it. There's a lot of dumb questions. Here it is. How many more? Yeah. Oh, how many? Here it is. How many more criminals?
How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from?
Okay. I mean, that's a dumb question. How many illegal criminals are you planning to deport? Half? Like 7 more. 1 a day for the next 30 days. No, all of them. Because they're not supposed to be here. First of all, they're illegal. Second of all, they're criminals. They're all gone. This is why, and he's right about the media. This is why the media is dying. This is why nobody really trusts the media anymore. Because when they have the chance to answer or to ask a question, they ask dumb questions. And then they get totally berated by everybody in the room, which I'm all for. In fact, I love that. I think there should be a show where CNN just gets one-on-one time with the entire cabinet. And they ask one question, and then President Donald Trump starts, and then maybe they go to like J.D. Vance, or maybe they draw numbers or they spin a wheel. Wouldn't that be great if you had the entire cabinet they're on a wheel, and one CNN reporter comes in, they ask a question, the wheel spins, and whoever the wheel lands on gets to just berate CNN for 20 minutes. I would watch that. I mean, look, we've already seen Brooke Rollins make total fun of Jake Tapper when he lied and said he wasn't on the left. now we've got Marco Rubio and Pam Bondi and everyone else laying into Caitlin Collins. It's really a beautiful thing to see. But that's not it. That wasn't the only question they had. They asked about Khalil Mahmoud. Are you going to deport Khalil Mahmoud? Khalil Mahmoud is the instigator at Columbia University who got all of the pro-Palestinian supporters to basically destroy that one entire semester, camp out in the front lawn, take over libraries and other buildings. And now he's lost his student visa. He's going home, and that's causing these Columbia grads to tear up their diplomas in protest for some reason. I don't understand any of that stuff, but they asked about that too. And he said, yeah, we're going to deport him. This was I believe, Stephen Miller on Fox News.
Will Mahmoud Khalil be deported from the United States? Quick answer on that, please.
Yes, he will, as will anyone who preaches hate for America. His organization said they wanted to eradicate Western civilization. Look, under this country, under this administration, under President Trump, people who hate America, who threaten our citizens, who rape, who murder, and who support those who rape and murder are going to be ejected from this country. And I just wish a fraction of the media outrage that we had over deporting terrorists and deporting monsters and deporting their sympathizers from this country was spent crying over the blood that was shed of American women and children over the last 4 years, or crying over the 500,000 children that Biden trafficked into this country, or crying over the neighborhoods destroyed by gangs and drugs and fentanyl. Cemeteries are filled with tombstones from Americans that were killed by Joe Biden and Mayorkas and his administration, suffering beyond imagination. We just arrested an illegal alien who committed sex crimes against 20 children. Sex crimes against 20 children freed by a sanctuary city. So I'll reserve my sympathy and my empathy for the Americans being brutalized by these monsters, and we will not apologize for getting these monsters the hell out of our country, Bill.
Yeah, so the short answer is yes. The long answer is I love my country and I'm protecting the people that live here, and we are never going to apologize for getting these monsters out of our back where they belong. Oh, man, I love the daily dose of Stephen. If I don't hear a day, if I don't hear a Stephen Miller rant at least once a day, was it even a day worth living? That's my thought process. I'm going to start. You know what we need to do? We need to create an intro. We need to create a Stephen Miller rant of the day intro with a daily dose of Miller. It's Miller time. That's probably been used. That might be copyright infringement, but I'm gonna check it out. I might just do that. Once a day, we're gonna pull a Stephen Miller rant, and we're gonna say it's Miller time. We're just gonna highlight Stephen Miller because the guys. Maybe I'll go as Stephen Miller for Halloween. All I need is a really tight-fitting suit because I already got the rest of the look down pat. After that, though, there was this one point in the meeting, and this is why I love also all the access, the unfettered access to President Donald Trump and his administration and everything that they do. Because what happens in these meetings, these Oval Office meetings, is you've got President Donald Trump, you've got President Bukele, and they are, yes, surrounded by reporters, yes, surrounded by President Donald Trump's staff, but they're also just two dudes chilling. They're just two dudes talking about stuff, and things come up. And President Donald Trump, he doesn't differentiate between on-camera President Trump and real person President Trump. If he has something he wants to say and there's cameras running, he's going to say it. If he's having a conversation with somebody, he doesn't tell them to shut off the cameras. He just has a conversation. Sometimes it's just stream of consciousness. Every single time, it's amazing. And they got into a conversation about men in women's sports. And this is, of course, a uniquely, I don't want to say uniquely American because other countries are doing it until, but it's a uniquely non-El Salvadoran type thing to do. In El Salvador and these Latin American countries, they look at hombres in chicas sports, deportes de las chicas, and they're like, ¿qué? ¿Qué? Hombres en las deportes de chicas? Ay caramba, es loco. That's what they say. Those are direct quotes, by the way, from some of our Latin American friends when they're asked about that. And that was basically Bukele's reaction when President Donald Trump casually mentioned it to him.
Like, do you allow men to play in women's sports? Do you allow men to box your women and box? Because I know you have a lot of boxing.
That's violence.
That's abuse of a woman. It's abuse of a woman.
Totally.
But we have people that fight to the death because they think men should be able to play in women's sports. And some of those sports, it wouldn't matter much, but it still matters. But some of them are very dangerous for women.
Some years ago, I would say a decade ago or so, women rights movements were pressuring so that we enacted specific laws to avoid men abusing women. And I think those laws were great because there were a lot of men abusing women. But now some of the same people are trying to backtrack on that and actually trying to make new laws allowing men to abuse women in sports. So actually, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and he's a great point. He goes, he said we were getting pressure. He said we were getting pressure years ago. Why? Well, because there was abuse amongst women. And they wanted tougher laws and more stringent penalties. They didn't want men to abuse women, spousal abuse, girlfriend abuse. Anytime you abuse a woman, they wanted it to be, they wanted massive repercussions, as well there should be, because nobody should abuse anybody, but specifically not a woman. And he goes, now, these same people that came to me and said, women are getting abused, do something about it. Women are getting abused, fix the problem. Women are getting abused. You're the president. Help us. Ayuda. Those same people are now turning around going, let the women get beat up by guys in the boxing ring. Let the women get pummeled by dudes at the Olympics. Let these dudes punch these women in the face because they're not actually dudes. They're transgender. They're actually women. They just have all the boy, biology. But they're women, so let them in the ring. Yeah. Forget what we said earlier about abuse of women. And Bukele's like, I can't believe it. It's crazy.
It's crazy. They have weightlifting records, right?
Yeah.
A woman gets up, lifts weights. She's incredible. A guy gets up and beats her by 100 pounds. What are you going to do? A record that hadn't been broken in 18 years. They put on an ounce, quarter of an ounce, eighth of an ounce for 18 years. Now they have a guy come up, ping. The whole thing is crazy, but they continue to fight. And I don't like talking about it because I want to save it for just before the next election. I said, my people, don't even talk about it because they'll change. And but I watched this morning. There was a congressman fighting to the death for men to play against women in sports. And you say to yourself, why? What are they doing, right? What are they doing? But your country's not too big in that.
No, of course not. We're big in protecting women.
Good. That's right. It's a very important form of protection, too.
And as you can see, most of my cabinet are women, so.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's why
they're not DEI hires or anything. They're just great at what they do. Right?
Look at that. He's like, oh, look at that. And by the way, you'll notice most of my cabinet here, that's all chicks. That's all women. I look at all these women I brought with me. And Donald Trump looks at them and goes, oh, that's very impressive. Very impressive. He goes, they're not DEI hires, by the way. They're all fully capable. They're here because they're doing the best job. And if you look at Donald Trump's cabinet, same thing. Yeah, I mean, you look across the way, you've got Susie Wiles, the most powerful woman in the world. You've got Pam Bondi. You've got Kristi Noem, who's there. You've got Brooke Rollins. You've got Tulsi Gabbard. You've got Linda McMahon. I mean, half of Donald Trump's cabinet is female. And it is really impressive, and it's really exciting to see. And of course, none of it DEI, none of it diversity, equity, and inclusion, all merit-based, because that's how we do it here in the United States, and that's how they do it in El Salvador. And it's really interesting. It's really phenomenal to see President Donald Trump hosting these world leaders. And I think it's important to share these messages because I want everybody watching, and I want everyone. And if you want to share this with somebody, you often get this sense because of the media and because of social media and the internet, you get this sense that we're outliers, that, oh, the United States of America, all of a sudden they're banning men and women's sports, or, oh, Donald Trump's such a bigot, or this, that, or the other, he hates women. We are not the outlier. We are part of the majority. The majority of the world thinks the same way we do. It's just you've got these ridiculous media people, and they're trying to skew it. They're trying to turn it one way, twist it the other way. They're trying to make you think that we're crazy and we need to change our ways. We need tampons in the men's room. We need tampons in the men's room because that's sensible. But if you go to any other country in the world and walk into if you went into El Salvador and walked into the men's room, and you looked around and said, "Donde está los tampons?" Los tampons. I don't know what they were. You would, first of all, that might be the last thing you actually say. You might never, if you walk into a bathroom anywhere in El Salvador, a men's room, if you walk into a men's room and say, "Señor, donde está las tampons?" That would not, let's just say it would not end well for you. That's the norm. What Tampon Tim from Minnesota wants to do with men's bathrooms and high school bathrooms and all that is not the norm. And that's why it's so good to see Bukele at the White House. And that's why it's so good to see these press conferences. And that's why I want to reiterate it, that the moral, Christian, conservative way of life is what the majority of the world is following and is striving toward. And you've just got these very vocal people who are out there trying to turn things around. Not only turn things around, but they utilize the courts. In fact, let me share this one with you. This is what's his name? Eisen. What's his first name? I always forget. And he is a Democrat operative. And this clip has been going around again. It's back from February. But when you're talking about these judges, when you see, every single day Donald Trump does something and some judge gets in the way. Every single day, Donald Trump says, "This is my policy." And then somebody goes to court and finds a district court judge that says, "Oh, no, it's not." And Donald Trump says, "I just did this." And then some judge goes, "Oh, no, you didn't." And then all of a sudden we've got this back and forth that ends up at the Supreme Court. But in the meantime, there's a lot of money spent. There's a lot of time wasted. And there's a lot of things that are done that are incorrect. And then the House of Representatives has to get involved. You've got to get Congress involved to stop these rogue judges. And this is all by design, by the way. This is all a plot. Here's Eisen earlier this year. Listen to what he said. Listen to what this Democrat operative said about courts and lawfare and the plan that he had before Donald Trump even started signing executive orders.
Lawsuits we're bringing, I'm planning 100 this year. 100. The lawsuits we're bringing are designed as part of that. And it's starting to work because you can't do it in the courts of law alone. You need the court of public opinion. And what did we see this week in parallel with our Treasury lawsuit, that first Treasury case? Peaceful protesters for the first time starting to show up at the Treasury building around the.
All right, so this is Norm Eisen, by the way. He was an Obama attorney, and his whole thing, this was February 9th. So get this, Donald Trump is sworn in on the 20th of January. 19 days later, this guy goes on MSNBC and says, "We're planning 100 lawsuits. We're planning 100. They're up to like 150 now. We're planning 100 lawsuits." They don't even know what they're suing for yet, but they're planning them. They're getting ready to go because that's all they can do. And he goes, look, it's not just the courts, it's the court of public opinion. So we have lawsuits ready to go. And he goes, and what else? Protesters showing up. Those are paid protesters. They're paying lawyers to go to court, and they're paying protesters to go to the Department of Education or the Treasury or wherever and pretend that there's public support and public opinion for these things, but there's not. There's no public support. There's no public opinion. There's none of those things. And we know that because the polls keep coming out that show that President Donald Trump is basically doing stuff that Americans like. President Donald Trump is doing things that Americans want him to do. This is Brad Todd, Republican strategist. And Brad Todd, Republican strategist, was on some show, one of those Sunday shows. I forget which one. And let me play for you what Brad Todd said about the latest poll numbers, President Donald Trump, and how well he's doing in the eyes of the American people.
Later this week, you saw a lot more clarity heading into the goal, which is get tough on China, be open to negotiate with other countries. If President Trump will sell this as a fairness issue, Americans are going to be with him. That CBS poll indicates a majority support his goals on this. Germany shouldn't be taxing our cars at 100% when we tax theirs at a quarter of that. It's a basic level of fairness. You know, and Democrats, for their part, this is a big chance for them. Like Elizabeth Warren, who you had on the show earlier, she's been for tariffs her whole life, but she hates Donald Trump more than she likes the things she believes in. It's a big chance. Joe Biden added tariffs to electric vehicles and solar panels and steel and aluminum. Democrats need to work with Donald Trump to crack down on China.
They are. Imagine how different this world would be if the Democrats didn't change their minds every time there was a new Republican president. Imagine if these Democrats who were always for tariffs or who were always against illegal immigrants or who always were for protecting women, imagine how great this world would be if they didn't change their minds just to placate some political minority. I mean, that is really, we could be so far ahead, but the Democrats are they're petrified. They're petrified about losing power that they just change like the weather. They will be pro-tariff one day when it's Barack Obama or Bill Clinton. But then when it's Donald Trump, they're like, no, tariffs are horrible and we're all going to go bankrupt. We've got video. I'm not going to play it. I'm not going to torture you again of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Barack Obama saying reciprocal tariffs are necessary to protect the economic interests of the United States of America. We have all of that on tape. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've heard it with my own ears. I've played it on this show. And now they're changing their tune. The same thing is happening with immigration. They used to want to build a wall. They used to want to have strong immigration. They used to want to deport people. They used to want to keep kids in cages or whatnot. Then all of a sudden, Donald Trump became president. No, they can't do that at all. They can't do that at all. And they have no new ideas and they have no new people. In fact, gosh, I almost don't want to play the Stephen Smith thing again, but I'm going to probably do it. The Democrat Party has no one to lead them. This is an entire party, millions of people, like over 100 million members. You had 74,000 people vote for Kamala Harris. That's not even including the people that don't vote. You've got half of the governors in this country are Democrats. You've got a little less than half are senators. Almost half exactly are in the House of Representatives. And not one person in that party could lead this country. Not one person in that party could beat President Donald Trump. Here's who they have. Okay. They've got Bernie Sanders, who is older than dirt. Bernie Sanders is older than Joe Biden. Joe Biden was too old. That's why they got him out of there. They told Joe Biden, you got to go. You got to go. You're too old. You're too feeble. You're losing your mind. You're not going to be able to get the votes. You're not going to be able to beat Donald Trump. So they went to his house in Delaware, Rehoboth Beach, and they threw him out. And I'm reading this great book all about it. It's really fascinating about how the debate was the turning point. And after that, they said, we got to go young. We got to go younger. It's time for a change. It's time for the new era. Well, who are they hauling out now? Bernie Sanders, who is older than Joe Biden. They threw out an old, rich white guy from the Northeast. And what did they do? They went and got an older, rich white guy from farther in the Northeast. They were like, okay, Joe Biden's not crazy enough. Let's get Bernie Sanders. Joe Biden's not older enough. Let's get Bernie Sanders. And they sent Bernie Sanders out on a tour with the star, with the leader of the Democrat Party, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And they said, go and woo people. Wow the crowds. Go and make your message heard. Go and become the savior of 2028. And not only did they send him out on a tour, but they sent him out on stage at Coachella.
We need you to stand up to fight for justice. To fight for economic justice, social justice, and racial justice. Now we got a president of the United States who, I agree, he thinks that climate change is a hoax. He is dangerously wrong. And you and I are going to have to stand up to the fossil fuel industry and tell them to stop destroying this planet. All over this country, not in California, not in Vermont, where I'm from, but in Florida, where Maxwell is from, many other states, politicians are trying to take away a woman's right to control her own body. We need you to stand up and fight for women's rights.
Okay, anyway, and it's more, it's just on and on, same old angry Bernie Sanders. And how mad would you be if you were at Coachella to hear, I don't know, some kind of stoner band, and all of a sudden you got stoner Bernie? And you know what? Probably you wouldn't be too mad. I imagine they probably all run. They probably all run in the same circles, but that's what they've got. They've got nobody. So what do? They turn to Stephen A. Smith. What is happening with this light today? Do you see that's like a disco? Now it's like changing. What is happening? It's green, it's blue, it's pink, it's red, it's green, it's blue, it's pink, it's red. All right, we'll just let it go for a minute. And now they're looking at Stephen A. Smith from ESPN, and they're saying, Stephen A. Smith, please, we have nobody in our own party. We have nobody that can beat President Donald Trump. We've got nobody at all. There's not a single leader of the tens of millions of Democrats out there. There's not a single person who can lead us. Please, for the love of God, we need an overpaid ESPN host.
I saw you mentioned Bill Maher. I saw Steve Bannon was on with Bill Maher, and he was asked what Democrats he worries about. And you know the only name he mentioned as a Democrat he'd be worried about. So are you really thinking about running for president? Is this something you think?
Listen, I have no choice because I've had elected officials, and I'm not going to give their names, elected officials coming up to me. I've had folks who are pundits come up to me. I've had folks that got a lot of money, billionaires and others, that have talked to me about exploratory committees and things of that nature. I'm not a politician. I've never had a desire to be a politician. I just signed a contract extension with ESPN. I am very, very
pretty
happy
good one, too.
With my day job. I'm very happy with my boss. This is a pretty damn good one. Just right. It's a pretty damn good contract. I couldn't be happier. But here's the reality. People have walked up to me, including my own pastor, for crying out loud, who has said to me, you don't know what God has planned for you. At least show the respect to the people who believe in you, who respect you, who believe that you can make a difference in this country, to leave the door open for any possibilities 2 to 3 years down the line.
Okay, so I won't play the whole thing because then he just goes into talking about the 22nd Amendment and ridiculousness. But he's basically saying, look, I've had politicians, Democrats, of course. I've had pundits, Democrats, of course. I've had rich billionaires, Democrats, of course, call me up and say, please, I've had my own pastor say, Stephen, you got to leave the door open for whatever could happen in the future. This guy is basically outing the entire Democrat Party. This guy is outing the media. He's outing the political elitists, the Democratic establishment, and all of the PAC money. He's outing everybody and saying, these people are coming to me and saying, you are the only one. They're stabbing every other candidate in the back. Pete Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, the dude from California with the good hair who owns the winery, Gavin Newsom, thank you. They're stabbing all of their own candidates in the back. They're basically tossing them aside and saying, none of y'all got what it takes to beat President Donald Trump. We need the overpaid sports guy. Incidentally, his contract was $100 million. $100 million for 5 years. $20 million a year to talk about sports. And he's like, God, that's why he's so angry all the time. He's sitting there going, I got it made in the shade. I got $100 million contract. I get to watch basketball. I get to watch football. I get to talk about this stuff with my friends. I get to wear these suits. I probably get a lot of downtime. I stay in ritzy hotels. I got a huge expense account. And the highest paid, by the way, ESPN is a failing network. Television, ABC, these are Paramount. They're all failing, but ESPN manages to find $100 million for their superstar, Stephen A. Smith. And so he gets the cash, he gets the payday. He's the it guy at ESPN. And now everybody's calling up saying, yeah, you got to walk away. We need you to run for president against President Donald Trump, the most popular president ever. Not just run for president. It's not like they're like, you know what? We don't have anyone to run for president against, I don't know, pick a lame president, Al Gore. No, not, he was on a Democrat. Oh, it's the guy. Mike Pence. There we go. It's not like they're like, hey, we need somebody to run against Mike Pence. You're the next man up, or you're going to be the guy that beat Mike Pence. He might actually beat Mike Pence. I might vote for him over Mike Pence. But it's Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who ran one of the most amazing campaigns, ran one of the most successful campaigns, was able to shift the entire electorate of the country, was able to shift minority groups of voters like Latinos and African Americans and suburban soccer moms and all these others, was able to shift a huge portion of the demographic to the right, was able to beat Kamala Harris more than he beat Joe Biden. Joe Biden would have beat Kamala Harris in this last election if you went by the counties that he won as opposed to the counties that she won, which were few and far between. In fact, let me think. Oh, yeah, she didn't beat Joe Biden in any counties. Joe Biden outscored her everywhere. And so they're looking around going, Stephen A. Smith, I know you just got $100 million, but we're going to need you in Washington, D.C. Now, the good news for him is if he does become president of the United States, the Democrats will make sure that he makes millions more. I mean, Hillary Clinton made over $120,000 the first year that she was running for president. And then after that, it all kind of pittered away. Barack Obama and Michelle Obama got hundreds of millions of dollars to go live out in Martha's Vineyard and paddleboard with their cooks and make really bad movies and podcasts. I mean, think about that. This is, by the way, again, why I get my feathers ruffled a little bit because, look, I'm not saying I'm great at what I do, but I'm way better than Michelle Obama. And she getting $50 million for her podcast that nobody listens to, where she talks about hot dogs being sandwiches. Come on, cut me where's my cheddar? Where's my, I have more listeners than she does, but she's got 1,000 times the money because the Democrats all take care of themselves. So Stephen A. Smith, even if he goes and runs and fails, they'll take care of him. He'll be rolling in the dough. He's not going to miss that $100 million whatsoever. But that's how bad it is in the Democrat Party right now. They don't have anybody. And it's not just because of Bernie Sanders. It's because, look, even with the Republicans, here's where the Republicans are going to run into trouble in 2026. It's not going to be at the national level. Donald Trump is going to have Steve Bannon figure out a way that he can run again. If failing that, if that Constitution is locked in stone and they can't figure out a way around it, Donald Trump is going to handpick somebody to be his successor. He's going to handpick J.D. Vance or Don Jr. or, I don't know, anybody, Marco Rubio. He's gonna walk around. The next 3 years, everybody is auditioning for the job. And in 2028, Donald Trump is going to have a sit down with his lawyers and Steve Bannon and his attorneys, and he's going to say, guys, can I run for a third term? And if they look at him and they say, honestly, sir, we've spent the last few years working on this. We've spent the last few years trying to figure it out. There's no constitutional way that you can run for a third term as president. You're done. Then he's going to say, fine. And he's going to figure out who's going to be the next president of the United States. He's going to handpick somebody. He's going to give them an endorsement, much like he did all the endorsements in the special elections, which ended up with victorious, victorious winners are redundant, but with victories in District 1 and District 6 here in Florida. Saved the House of U.S. Representatives. Didn't really need Elise Stefanik to step back, but she did, and we appreciate her sacrifice. So that's what Donald Trump's going to do. Then he's going to get Elon Musk to write some big fat checks to that person. And he himself is probably going to donate a bunch of money to that person. And he's going to get on his plane and he's going to fly around the country and he's going to hold rallies for that person. And he's going to say, my hand-chosen successor, the only one who can protect America moving forward. I can't do a third term. I tried. but they said no. And so now my third term will be blank's first term. And if you vote for blank, it will be like voting for me for a third term. That's what he's going to do. And so it's going to be either J.D. Vance or Don Jr. or Marco Rubio. I don't know who it is, but it's going to be somebody. And that person is going to walk right into the job because the Democrats don't have anybody. So they're not looking at the White House. I mean, they're trying, but they're going to have to put somebody up there. But they're looking at the House of Representatives. They're looking at these districts that they think they can win. And they could probably win a couple of them. They're looking at these districts that they think are winnable, that they can convert from red districts to blue districts. They're looking for people like they found in District 6 that are maybe not the strongest candidates. And that's good news for people that are strong candidates because they're going to have the opportunity to come in. If they have the right messaging, if they have the right support system, they're going to be able to come in and say, look, we need to protect this district. This district is up for grabs. This district is not safe. And if this district is not safe, then the House of Representatives is not safe. I happen to live in one of those districts and I'm making some plans on how I can protect it. But in the meantime, that's going to have to happen in all 435 districts. There's going to be a nationwide audit of Republican seats to see which ones are safe, which ones are not, and which candidates can protect the seats that are 50-50, up for grabs, maybe not the safest bet. Because the House of Representatives is the only place the Democrats can get power, and they know that. And that is why President Donald Trump told the media, I tell the Republicans all the time, save it for the midterms. Don't talk about women, men and women's sports. Save it for the midterms. Let me bring that again. Let me bring that up here again. Where is it? President Donald Trump speaking to Bukele and the media. And he says, hold on, I got to pull the right file here. And he says, here it is.
Like, do you allow me? But they continue to fight. And I don't like talking about it because I want to save it for just before the next election. I said, my people, don't even talk about it because they'll change. And, but I watched this morning, there was a...
Yeah, and that's brilliant. That's exactly right. Don't talk about it. Don't talk about the Democrats and their stupidity. Don't talk about the Democrats clinging to these old ideas of DEI and transgender athletes and all this other stuff that we know doesn't work. We know this stuff doesn't work. Why? Because they lost. Kamala Harris lost. If Kamala Harris won, then guess what? We know that these are winning issues. These are not winning issues. These are losing issues for a bunch of losers. And Donald Trump does not want, if your enemy has a losing issue, you don't want your enemy to release it. You want your enemy to hold on to it to the midterm elections. So Donald Trump says, don't say anything about let him go. Let him fight for the men and women's sports. I'm not going to say a word about it. Let him fight for that. Let him fight for the tampons in the boys' room. I'm not going to say, let him fight for the gang members to stay in this country. The illegal, criminal, murderous, thuggish, drug-dealing, human trafficking gang members. Let him fight for those people. I'm not going to say a word about it because come midterms, we're going to go right down the list. Let him fight for China. Let him fight for higher taxes. Don't say a word. And then we're going to clobber him in the midterms. We're going to come in hard and we're going to make sure that everybody knows these people have not given up on these losing issues. And if you don't give up on a losing issue, you are a loser. And we don't want losers in our House of Representatives. We want winners. Because Donald Trump or whoever is going to succeed him is going to need a bunch of winners in the House of Representatives to push their agenda forward. They're going to need a bunch of winners in the Senate to push that agenda forward. And that's why he's continuing to fight. Speaking of the tariffs, there was an interesting story over the weekend with Donald Trump changing his mind on tariffs or backtracking on tariffs. And that story was, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh yeah, a lie, false, not true. Here's Kevin Hassett, the National Economic Council director, to talk about the economy, Donald Trump's plan, and why it's so brilliant. And keep in mind, this egg-headed dude is probably the smartest guy in the world.
These policies, which the president successfully enacted in the first term, are going to increase the demand for labor, increase wages, up by almost $6,500 in the first 3 years of the Trump administration. And so what it means is that even if you accept the naysayers' perspective on what might happen to the price of a cup of coffee, that the person walking into the coffee shop is going to have a lot more money. In the 15 years after China entered the WTO, real wages went down. So wages went down by more than prices as we thought these cheap goods were going to revolutionize America. In fact, it was the opposite. Welfare went down. We had Angus Deaton write a whole book about the deaths of despair that were related to this. And so I think we're very optimistic about the fact that people are going to have more money in their pockets and that they're going to have a higher standard of living.
Yeah, more money in your pocket, higher standard of living. And when you have more money in your pocket, fun fact, you don't save it, you spend it. And when you spend your money, everybody wins. That's what happens. But the Democrats, they're so hell-bent on the United States economy not rebounding. They're so hell-bent on Americans remaining poor. They want America to languish at the hands of our oppressors and nations that hate us. China does not like us. Russia does not like us. Iran does not like us. None of these countries, they would love to see America fall. And that is not what Donald Trump is going to allow. Janet Yellen, who was the Secretary of the Treasury before Scott Bessent, before the current one, Janet Yellen, she was being interviewed, and she said, bringing back manufacturing jobs to the United States of America is a pipe dream.
Perhaps it's to bring back American manufacturing, but I really think that's a pipe dream and not something that is likely to be accomplished. And we could even raise questions about whether or not, in a broad-based way, that's a desirable goal.
She was the Secretary of the Treasury, and she's saying bringing back American manufacturing is a pipe dream. No wonder. No wonder the economy was so bad under Joe Biden. No wonder the economy was so bad under the Biden administration, because the Secretary of the Treasury said, oh, bringing back manufacturing, yeah, that ain't never going to happen. That's impossible. That's a pipe dream. We want China to have all the manufacturing. We want to keep exporting jobs. We want all that to happen. That's what we're working for. That's their wet dream. The pipe dream was bringing back manufacturing. Donald Trump saying, no. That's the goal. We're going to make it happen. You dream big, you think big, you act big, and you win big. And that's exactly what they're going to do. And it's crazy how you can see this. I mean, just over and over and over again, how Donald Trump's consistently winning. And everything Donald Trump does that the media and the left and everybody else says is bad turns out to be exactly the right thing to do. And he's keeping us safe. He's keeping us healthy. He's keeping us strong. Oh, the Panama Canal is back. Fun fact, the Panama Canal, he beat China on the Panama Canal. He had Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth fly down to Panama and say, guys, no China down here, okay?
Well, President Trump said in his State of the Union address, China has too much influence over the Panama Canal and America's going to take it back. And that's exactly what I was charged to do, what we're continuing to do. Chinese influence cannot control our own backyard, especially a critical waterway, key terrain like the Panama Canal. You mentioned 40% of ships are U.S. ships. 75% are going to or from a port. So we were able to secure two historic agreements. One with the Panama Canal Authority, that our ships, our military vessels and auxiliary vessels will travel first and free through that Panama Canal. And then we also signed a memorandum of understanding with the defense secretary over there and the president that established a robust and growing U.S. presence, right? You need to secure that key terrain. So Fort Sherman will reopen jointly with the Panamanians, a jungle school, and we're going to have a larger U.S. presence at the invitation of Panama, working with them to keep the communist Chinese out.
And that's it. And then basically he's saying, look, we went down there, we got an agreement in writing, and we will be first and free through the Panama Canal. Any American interest, whether it's a cargo ship or a military vessel, will be the first ones through the canal, and they will be free. We're not going to have to pay anymore to run ships, our own ships, through a canal that we built and gave you for $1. The least you can do is let us go through first and free. And that's going to boost our commerce, boost our military, keep us safe. And oh yeah, China's out of there. And we've got military presence and we've got all this other kind of stuff. And it's going to enhance the all-around safety, security, and financial stability of the United States of America. And when you enhance the safety, security, and financial stability of the United States of America, what happens? You weaken China in all of those aspects. And that's great. That's what we want to do. And we're doing it with the Secretary of Defense. Howard Lutnick is saying the same thing with tariffs. Look, these tariffs, they claim that Donald Trump changed his mind on tariffs and all of a sudden said, I'm going to add an exemption to tariffs from China Yeah, we're going to tariff China at 125%, but you know what? We're actually going to take off the tariffs on any and all of these microchips or computer products or digital phones, any of that stuff. That's not at all what happened. Here's Howard Lutnick to explain really to the media what is going on with the new tariffs.
Remember, those products are going to be part of the semiconductor sectoral tariffs, which are coming. So you're going to see this week there'll be a register in the Federal Registry. There'll be a notice put out. That is different types of work. So we're going to do that. We did that in autos. The president's going to do it for pharmaceuticals, and he's going to do it for semiconductors. So all those products are going to come under semiconductors, and they're going to have a special focus type of tariff to make sure that those products get reshored. We need to have semiconductors. We need to have chips, and we need to have flat panels. We need to have these things made in America. We can't be reliant on Southeast Asia for all of the things that operate for us. So what he's doing is he's saying they're exempt from the reciprocal tariffs, but they're included in the semiconductor tariffs, which are coming in probably a month or two. So
yeah, so that's the deal. So basically, just like we did with the automobile manufacturing, we're doing it now with semiconductors, and they're not exempt from, or they're exempt from the reciprocal tariffs, but they have their own tariff sub-classification, because really, it's one thing to say there's a blanket tariff on this country. But when you look into it and when you get into it in the nitty gritty and to really exert control, to really make money and to really make sure that you're protecting your own infrastructure as well, you need to itemize your tariffs, much like your tax returns. You go in and you itemize your deductions. You've got to itemize your tariffs. And you've got to say, all right, we're doing a blanket tariff on this country, but then let's take a look at some of these subsectors and see how we can work on that. All of it's a negotiation. All of it's working. And all of it is going to bring it's going to be, well, here's Stephen Miller to tell you how epic it's going to be.
History will record that the actions President Trump has taken in recent days were the beginning of saving the West from complete economic domination by another power.
Okay, there you go. I think that's you know what? I couldn't have said it better myself, so I won't. That's a good ending right there. Right, people will look back on this day and see President Trump's administration as the beginning of saving the world, or saving the West rather, from economic domination by China and Southeast Asia. Hey, listen, don't forget to subscribe, by the way, to this channel, because we're going to be doing this every single day, starting at 1 o'clock, our brand new time, 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. And then if you're listening to the podcast, don't worry, the podcast will get up ASAP. We're going to get that podcast up here in just a minute. You can get it on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you happen to be. Make sure you're telling that particular platform, whether it's video or audio or both, make sure you tell them you want this stuff. You want it all the time. I want Mark Kaye all the time. I want it as often as I can get it. Because we want you to stay informed. We want you to stay entertained. We want you to be inspired. We need you to be enlightened by what's really happening. We need you to know who our friends are, who our allies are, and who, most importantly, our enemies are. And we've got to stay abreast of what they're doing every single day to undermine our actions. Because we're working hard. You, me, the rest of us, Kayetriots all over the place, we're working hard. We're working hard to protect ourselves, our family, our finances, our future, our constitutional republic. And we are under attack every single day. And this next battle, the battle of 2026, is coming up fast. It's coming up strong. It's coming up before you know it. And if you want to remain in power, if you want to remain the land of the free and the home of the brave, if you want the woke DEI crap to stay buried deep underground, then you've got to stay sharp. You've got to stay informed. And you've got to stay ready to fight so that we can all save the republic. All right, we're going to have an after party. A little bit more of the Mark Kaye Saves the Republic podcast. We're going to do a little after party. If you're not a member of the Kayetriot Club, you can join at Kayetriots.com. We would love to have you. We need more Kayetriots every single day. That's why we're building up our numbers. I am here at Mar-a-Lago for the next 30 minutes or so. The after party begins in 3 minutes. La, 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 la. Hi. This is so... Wait, you can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Oh, wait. Oh. Hello? Can you hear me now? What's going on? You can hear me now, right? Hello? Wait, there should be sound now. Hello? There's no sound? Oh. Oh, good. Yeah, there's sound now. Yeah, I had it muted for some reason because it's stupid Rumble. I'm not a big fan of this Rumble Studio. It's not my favorite at all. It's the word I'm looking for. Oh yeah, my least favorite. That's what it is. But man, there's crazy stuff today. Look at it. Look at the light. Look at the light. I'm gonna turn it off. Should I turn it off or should I leave it? I'm gonna turn it off because we're gonna reset the thing. I think I like it, but it gets a little annoying after a bit. I think what happens is it's plugged in, but it also runs on battery. And I think what happens is sometimes it doesn't connect, like it doesn't go with the AC, it goes with the battery and it resets itself. It's kind of weird, but I mean, it's a good light, but we're going to give it a minute. All right, listen, everybody, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to switch to supporters only in about 30 seconds. I'm going to activate it. So in 30 seconds, we're going to be supporters only. And I have some really exciting news. Something happened this weekend that I'm so stoked about. Totally exciting. Totally excited about it. And I'm going to share it with all of our supporters here in just a minute. If you're not a supporter, you're not going to hear it. So you're going to want to become a supporter. And if you are a supporter, just be patient. We have about 13 more seconds and then we'll all be in the after party officially. If you're not a supporter, there's a link that you can use to become a supporter and it's only $10 a month. So it's really worth it. Yay. All right. Fun fact. Hi, everybody. Guys, this is great. I'm still live on YouTube. There's no way. Oh, am I? Oh, I sure am. Hang on. Wait, I can fix that.